I'm honored once again to address this essential organization which works so hard to defend our most precious resources of freedom and democracy. In my previous addresses in prior years, I strongly advocated for marriage equality for same-gender couples in Taiwan. I am, of course, delighted that the Supreme Court of Taiwan has declared marriage equality a constitutional right in terms very similar to Supreme Courts in other countries. It is now up to the legislature of Taiwan to pass a law which grants equality in marriage to all its citizens. The only issue that remains is, will marriage for same-gender couples be on equal terms as unions as differently gendered couples? I urge Taiwan to opt for equality rather than granting mere second-class marital status to same-gender couples. More freedom for anyone, anywhere, is good news for freedom-loving people everywhere. Taiwan stands as a beacon of freedom and democracy and gender equality in the world that is once again troubled by tendencies towards authoritarian patriarchy. This trend has happened before, and its reoccurrence was predicted 50 years ago at the onset of climate change. Freedom and democracy lead to prosperity and harmony. However, when societies are distressed by economic hardship and other stressful conditions such as climate change, forced migration, there are tendencies towards authoritarian patriarchy. With the stock market crash of 1929, there was a global rise of authoritarian and patriarchal parties which tried to take power in many nations of the world. They succeeded in Spain, Italy, Germany, Japan, and other countries. These overly patriarchal authoritarian governments led the world to global war, famine, and massive destruction. The global recession of capital markets in 2008 and the stress of climate change and unprecedented flows of forced migration have again created populist, authoritarian, and patriarchal parties vying for power in the world's democracies. There are current leaders of this type in the United States, India, and the Philippines. Anti-immigration feeling led to the United Kingdom to opt to leave the European Union. Anti-immigrant parties scored massive gains in Germany, France, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. All these movements hold similar views in common. They emphasize national identity and reject diversity. America first, England for the English, Hindu nationalism, Holland for the Dutch, Germany for the Germans, France for the French, and so on. At a time when there is a desperate need for the generosity in immigration laws, these nativist governments will want to stop all immigration. Such moves are short-sighted. Every nation which allows immigration has benefited from the influx of new talents and ideas. Certainly, too much immigration can be destabilizing, but allowing some immigration is very healthy. There's also the element of religious and ideological purity in authoritarian regimes. For example, Hungary wants only to accept Christian refugees. The Hungarian government requires all churches to define marriage as only between one man and one woman. Non-conforming churches risk losing their government funding. This kind of religious purity can be found in Hindu nationalism in India, Buddhism in Myanmar, Protestantism in the United States, and similar trends in other places. During the Second World War, many Buddhists were arrested in Japan due to their peaceful tendencies. Patriotic Japanese were encouraged to practice only the state religion of Shintoism. With insistence on religious and ideological purity also comes the suppression of gender equality. Overly male-dominated governments come to a bad end. In these stressful times, democracy, gender equality, and religious freedom are challenged. Other aspects of freedom which tend to be challenged are under stress are the press and media freedom, as well as freedom of speech and dissent. When legitimate investigative journalism is characterized as fake news, truth itself is under attack. Intimidation and arrests of legitimate journalists is at a global all-time high. Without respect for the truth, freedom and democracy are in grave danger. What is the definition of stupid? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. My dear friends, we have been down this road before. We have, in times of financial and political stress, turned to authoritarian and patriarchal governments. They have always led us to calamity and despair. Forced cultural revolutions, ideological purity, religious orthodoxy, political and social conformity always lead to famine, economic collapse, war, and devastation. Societies which have stood the test of time have found that they must protect significant levels of choice, diversity, gender equality, and personal freedom to thrive and survive. Despite the stresses of climate change, forced migration, threats of war, and economic stress, we must nurture and preserve freedom, democracy, gender equality, global citizenship, and respect for diversity and inclusion for everyone, everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.